The Lormac were beings of crystalline data. Their forms, tall and slender, seemed forged from polished obsidian, their movements precise and economical. Where a face might have been on another species, the Lormac possessed smooth, featureless plates that sometimes shimmered with complex, indecipherable light patterns, their primary mode of expressing complex data, though their vocal translators handled mundane interspecies communication with a flat, toneless efficiency. Their entire civilization was built upon the primacy of pure data. History, to the Lormac, was not a narrative but a dataset, to be continuously refined, purged of inaccuracies, emotional distortions, and conflicting accounts. Obsolete information was not archived, it was deleted. To cling to such flawed records, as humans did, was, in the Lormac assessment, a sign of profound societal immaturity and sentimental folly. Human historians, to the Lormac, were baffling. They were seen as keepers of chaos, emotional hoarders who wallowed in the messy, often contradictory, and thoroughly unoptimized annals of their species. Why, the Lormac wondered, would any rational being preserve epic poems filled with blatant exaggerations alongside meticulously kept census records? Why keep multiple, wildly differing eyewitness accounts of the same event? It was inefficient, illogical, and from the Lormac perspective, a dangerous impediment to true understanding. Thus, when the Lormac delegation ship, the Precision of Thought, glided into Earth's orbit, its mission was one of benevolent, if condescending, assistance. They were here to help humanity optimize its historical databases for eventual, seamless integration into the galactic concord of enlightened polities. This meant, primarily, a grand purge. Leading the delegation was primary censor Valerius. Valerius's faceplate maintained a constant, cool blue shimmer indicative of serene operational focus. Valerius considered this mission a simple, if tedious, act of galactic civic duty, like helping a primitive tribe organize its bead collection. Esteemed representatives of Terra, Valerius intoned via translator to the assembled committee of Earth's foremost historians and archivists, gathered in the hushed, data-screen-lined conference room of the Global Archives. The humans sat in comfortable, if decidedly low-tech, chairs. Most wore spectacles or had data readers perched on their noses. The Lormac hegemony offers its expertise in data refinement. Your historical records, while voluminous, suffer from significant redundancy, emotional contamination, and narrative divergence. We propose a collaborative effort to distill these records into a singular, verified, and optimally efficient dataset. Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose tweed jacket seemed as ancient and storied as the scrolls he sometimes still consulted in their original physical form, leaned forward. His face was mostly obscured by a voluminous gray beard and the shadow cast by the brim of an old, favored hat he rarely removed indoors. "Primary censor Valerius," Dr. Thorne said, his voice a warm baritone that contrasted sharply with the Lormac's monotone. "We appreciate the spirit of your offer. However, the redundancies and divergences you speak of are often the very essence of our history. They contain the nuances, the perspectives, the humanity of our past." Valerius's faceplate flickered briefly with a pattern Lena Hansen, Dr. Thorne's sharp, digitally savvy assistant archivist, mentally tagged as cognitive dissonance. Lena sat with a sleek neural interface band across her temples, her own eyes focused on the live data feed from the Lormac ship, looking for any subtle tells in their energy signatures. Sentimentality towards flawed data is an impediment to clarity, Valerius stated. A single, verified truth is superior to a multitude of confused echoes. Consider, for example, your period referred to as the Warring States of Eldoria. Our preliminary scans indicate no fewer than 17 distinct, often contradictory, primary accounts of its instigating factors. This is inefficient. It is also a rich field for understanding propaganda, societal stress fractures, and the unreliability of memory under duress. Primary censor, countered Dr. Alara Vance, a specialist in sociolinguistic historical analysis, her figure largely hidden behind a large monitor displaying comparative texts. To purify, it would be to lose invaluable insight into how societies, any society, can be manipulated by narrative. The discussion, or rather, the polite impasse, continued for several days. The Lormac presented flowcharts of data optimization. The humans presented arguments for the preservation of complexity. Valerius, with the patient air of one explaining astrophysics to a particularly slow mollusk, finally proposed a practical demonstration. Perhaps a tangible example will illuminate the benefits, Valerius suggested. Allow us to take a small, contained segment of your historical data, the aforementioned warring states of Eldoria, for instance, and apply our refinement protocols. We will demonstrate how a chaotic amalgam of information can be transformed into a streamlined, verifiably accurate historical record. You will observe. No data will be permanently deleted from your core archive without your explicit consent at this stage. Dr. Thorne exchanged a look with Lena and the other senior historians. It was a risk, but it was also an opportunity. Very well, primary censor, Dr. Thorne agreed. We will observe your demonstration. Lena, please ensure our team has full spectral analysis of their process, every algorithm, every data point they access and modify. Lena nodded, her fingers already flying across her interface. Already on it, Aris, mirroring their workspace now. The Lormac set up a secure data enclave, into which a copy of all records pertaining to the warring states of Eldoria was fed. This was a period from early human interstellar colonization, centuries ago, marked by brutal conflicts between newly established planetary states, fueled by resource scarcity, ideological clashes, and the rampant egos of self-proclaimed leaders. Its history was a tangled mess of heroic sagas, bitter accusations, forged documents, and fragmented eyewitness accounts, a historian's nightmare and a sociologist's playground. As the Lormac began their refinement, their algorithms, visible on a vast central monitor as pulsating lines of light, started to sift, categorize, and flag data for deletion. Emotional language, unverifiable claims, contradictory narratives, these are being isolated, Valerius narrated, its faceplate glowing with didactic satisfaction. Dr. Thorne watched, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Lena's interface was working furiously, not just recording, but analyzing the Lormac's methodology. The human team, far from being passive observers, was now huddled, whispering, cross-referencing the Lormac actions with their own vast database, the complete, messy, unexpurgated history of humanity. After a few hours, Valerius announced, "We have identified the core verifiable data points. The noise, as you might term it, accounts for approximately 87.4% of the total dataset. We will now begin the simulated purging of this extraneous material." It was then that Dr. Thorne cleared his throat. "Primary censor Valerius, before you proceed, my team has a few observations on your process." Valerius paused the simulation, its headplate tilting almost imperceptibly. "Observations." "Indeed," Thorne said. "Lena, if you would." Lena Hansen stood, her own small projector casting a new set of images alongside the Lormac display. "Primary censor, your algorithms for identifying emotionally compromised data and narrative divergence are remarkably efficient," she began, her voice calm but firm. "They are also, if I may say, remarkably familiar." She brought up a series of documents from human history, decrees from ancient tyrants ordering the burning of inconvenient texts, propaganda from 20th century dictatorships, internal memos from collapsing corporate empires desperately trying to control the narrative. "Your data filtration matrix," Lena continued, "bears a structural similarity, a striking one, in fact, to historical instances of state-controlled information suppression in human societies. Specifically, regimes that sought to create a single, purified narrative to consolidate power, often with predictable long-term consequences." Valerius's faceplate remained impassive, but the ambient energy readings Lena was monitoring from the Lormac delegation showed a tiny, almost imperceptible spike. "Your comparison is noted, though its relevance is questionable. Our process is based on pure logic, not political expediency." "Is it?" Dr. Thorne interjected softly. Consider the cult of the rational hand from our own Martian unification wars, primary censor. They too sought a history purged of emotion, based on pure reason. They deleted any record that contradicted their narrative of inevitable, logical victory. The result was a society so brittle, so incapable of understanding dissenting viewpoints or adapting to unforeseen emotional variables, that it shattered from within at the first sign of genuine crisis. Their pure history gave them no tools to understand the impure motivations of their populace. Dr. Vance then stepped forward. Furthermore, primary censor, your criteria for verifiable data appear to heavily favor official pronouncements and state-sanctioned records from the Eldorian period. You are systematically downweighting personal testimonies, folklore, even artistic expressions that convey the suffering and dissent of the common populace. This is a classic error made by numerous human autocrats, who then found themselves utterly blindsided by popular uprisings they had no data to predict, because they had defined the relevant data too narrowly. The human historians began to weave a tapestry, using threads from their own messy past. They showed how the Lormac's meticulous purging of conflicting Eldorian narratives mirrored the tactics of historical revisionists who paved the way for societal schisms. They pulled up psychological studies from their archives on how populations react to perceived information control, the rise of counter-narratives, the subtle ways dissent ferments when official history becomes too sterile, too unbelievable. Then Lena Hansen delivered the true payload. Primary censor, she said, based on our analysis of your data refinement protocols, and cross-referencing these with approximately 3,412 documented instances of similar systemic information control patterns in human history, we have developed a predictive model. On her display, a new simulation began to run. It depicted a stylized representation of a complex, interconnected society, the Lormac hegemony. Your society, as we understand it, prides itself on logical consistency and data purity, Lena explained. But what if a dissenting faction within the Lormac, or an external entity with sufficient understanding of your system, were to introduce information that is logically consistent with your purified dataset, yet subtly engineered to promote societal instability? Information that your own purged history would give you no context to recognize as manipulative. The simulation showed it, a carefully crafted piece of pure data, perhaps a fabricated historical precedent, or a logical reinterpretation of a core Lormac principle being introduced into their system. Because it contained no overt emotional markers or direct contradictions with the already sanitized official record, it passed through their filters. But it began to subtly alter perceptions, create divisions, justify actions that would slowly erode the hegemony's cohesion. The human simulation showed how such a society, having deleted its own memory of internal conflicts, deceptions, and the messy reality of how ideas can be weaponized, would be incredibly vulnerable to such an attack. It depicted cascading system failures, not due to illogical data, but due to perfectly logical data applied within a framework stripped of historical wisdom and context. The end result in the human simulation was the slow, logical, and undeniable unraveling of the Lormac's ordered world. The room was silent. The Lormac delegation stood motionless. Valerius's faceplate, which had been a cool, confident blue, was now cycling through a series of faint, erratic patterns of light. A display Lena's software tentatively flagged as system error or profound uncertainty. This is speculative, Valerius finally managed, its voice translator carrying an almost imperceptible tremor. Is it? Dr. Thorne asked gently. Primary censor, our history, in all its ugliness and contradiction, is our shield. It is a dataset of failures, triumphs, manipulations, and moments of unexpected grace. It teaches us not just what happened, but how things happen, why people do what they do, how systems break, and how they can be subtly subverted by those who understand the power of narrative, even narratives disguised as pure data. By seeking to erase your own noise, You may have inadvertently deafened yourselves to the most dangerous signals. Valerius did not respond for a long time. The Lormac simulation of the optimized Eldorian history remained frozen on the main screen, its neat, sterile lines suddenly looking less like enlightenment and more like a carefully constructed cage. Finally, Valerius spoke. "Halt the demonstration. All refinement protocols are to be suspended." The Lormac delegation visibly relaxed, a subtle deflation in their rigid postures. "We require time to analyze this new input." The Lormac did not stay on Earth much longer. Their official reason for departure was the need for further internal consultation. The collaborative effort to purify Earth's history was never mentioned again. Before they left, primary censor Valerius transmitted a single, private message to Dr. Aris Thorne. It contained no words, only a complex data packet. When Lena decrypted it, it was a Lormac request for full, unredacted access to specific sections of human history. Not the sanitized summaries, but the raw, contradictory, emotionally charged primary sources concerning societal collapse and recovery, information control, and internal dissent. Word of what happened in the global archives, though officially downplayed, began to seep into galactic channels. The Lormac, previously seen as the galaxy's ultimate data purists, were now rumored to be frantically and secretly attempting to reconstruct fragments of their own deleted histories, searching for the noise they had so long despised. Other species, particularly those with complex social structures or those wary of cultural contamination, began to look at human historical archives with new interest. Delegations arrived on Earth, not to offer help, but to ask questions. Human historians, once seen as quaint eccentrics, found themselves in demand as consultants, their understanding of the messy variable of societal behavior proving invaluable. And so, a new saying began to gain currency in the corridors of galactic power, often uttered before making any significant diplomatic or strategic decision. Better ask the human archivists. Chances are they've seen it all before, probably several times, and in excruciating, well-documented detail. Humanity's unkempt, sprawling, often embarrassing history had become one of its most unexpected and most potent galactic assets.